1. Back in 1998, or 99, I was around 5 or 6 years old and living in a crime and drug-ridden part of the downtown area. Our house had a giant backyard that was full of thick jungle-like trees, and bushes that had been taken over by the earth and also random passers-by. We knew this due to the heroin needles that were around, and half of a mattress that had once been on the forest floor that had been thrown 15 feet into the air with the trees. There was also a path that people would use as a shortcut to the main road, so there was a lot of traffic with shady people passing through. When you're a kid, this is a nightmare of a backyard, so I was spooked since the time we moved in. I would complain constantly to Mom about someone watching me from outside my window when I would try to sleep. Once or twice, there had been times of him watching me and he had shined a light in my room, and I saw a flash of his face which I can still picture. His dark eyes burned through me, and for a while, I never said anything, but eventually I told someone. My mom always said it was just a nightmare, and brushed it off for a week or two while ignoring my relentless complaints. Eventually, after having to fight with me to go to sleep one night, my mom had dragged me outside the next morning to prove me wrong. We went outside to my window, and to her surprise, the grass had been stomped on only outside of my window, to the point that the grass was almost all dead and mud remained. There was also tons of scratch marks from a tool of some kind outside the window, as if someone was trying to break in. I was in a basement with one of those small windows that don't open, so breaking in through there is super unlikely, but it still shook my family. My mom was horrified and had started making plans to move, but we were so broke growing up that leaving right away was not an option. Around that time, me and my best friend, who was also my next-door neighbor, had become inseparable. We hung out almost constantly, and had no sense of danger, and would do dumb stuff like go to other neighbors' houses and ask for candy. Our favorite was this elderly lady who always had hostess cakes for us, and we would actually go inside her house to hang out there. She was unbelievably nice and took care of us in a way. Our parents had no idea we did this, but it was our little secret. One day we were playing around the neighborhood and my mom yelled for me to come home, so we could go pick up dinner just around the corner. We were only gone for 15 minutes at most, and when we came back to the house we were in complete shock. The street was closed off with crime scene tape. There were 2 or 3 news station vans, a dozen police cars, and either a life flight helicopter getting ready to touch down, or a news helicopter. While we were gone getting food, a man who was not from the neighborhood, but had been staying with his mom for the last few weeks, had walked past my best friend's yard and saw her on the phone. She was talking to a friend and making faces, or whatever young kids do, and this man thought she was making fun of him and talking about him on the phone. This man got so upset at the thought of someone making fun of him that he walked back to his mom's house and came back with a butcher knife and was planning on killing this girl for mistreating him. Because of where she was sitting on the porch, she could see him coming back with the knife and ran inside the home and locked herself in the bathroom and called the police with the phone that she luckily already had in her hand. Unfortunately, my friend's mom was in the kitchen and was not so lucky. The man took his anger out on her and stabbed her, according to the Salt Lake Tribune article from 1998 titled "Man Booked in Stabbing." It was 7 times. Somehow, after the amount of times her mother was stabbed, she survived and made a full recovery after many surgeries. After his arrest, the story was all over the news, and I remember watching it with my mom pretty religiously to make sure my friend's mom was all right. They posted his mugshot, and I remember the most intense amount of fear flowing through me. The man who stabbed this woman was also the man who would watch me outside my window. I later found out that we had met this man weeks earlier at the elderly lady's house we frequented for candy. It was her son, and he had initially met us at her house and had been keeping an eye on us ever since. He had only gotten out of prison a month or so earlier, and was staying with her since his release. I never took note of him when we first met, but maybe if I did, I would have known right away who my night stalker was, and could have prevented all that happened after. We never did end up moving. My mom figured the danger was gone, so we stayed another year. To this day, I never sleep with blinds open. To the creep who would watch me sleep and try to murder my friend and her mother, I hope we never meet and you're rotting in jail somewhere. 2. I'd like to preface this post by saying this is my first time publicly announcing my bisexuality. I've never openly admitted it to anyone except for my close best friends, because I prefer not to wear my sexuality on my sleeve due to being raised in a household that was fairly anti-LGBT. Feels kind of good to come out and take this weight off my shoulders. With that out of the way, on to the story. I'm a 19-year-old male, 5'9", 160 pounds, scrawny, middle-length red hair and a large beard. I'm by no means attractive. I work at my local Walmart on the fresh cap team, which basically means that I stock all the fresh areas like produce, meats, deli, and bakery. This is where I met the man that I wish I had never met in the first place. His name was John. John was a fairly large man, about 6'2", overweight, probably about 225 pounds, probably like 55 or 60, and very, very strange. He always gave me a bad feeling. He honestly looks like the type of person you would picture when you think of a pedophile. That won't be a surprise a little further into the story. At first, he seemed like a fairly nice man, liked to chat, would ask questions like how my day was, just casual conversation. I thought nothing of it. Just a co-worker trying to be nice, or so it seemed. His questions began to get a little more personal. Things about school, home life, etc. I still shrugged it off as him just trying to be friendly. But then he asked me if I had a girlfriend. I told him that I was single and didn't see myself in a relationship anytime soon. Let me re-emphasize that this man is easily 40 years older than me. So this question came off as more than a little creepy. He just said, "Oh," and carried on working like before. So I shrugged it off once again, no harm, right? Boy, was I wrong. John liked to sing. He wasn't very good at it though. He would constantly sing strange old songs, and sometimes he'd even sing old cartoon theme songs. He also made odd comments and other small things. At first I thought he was just a little quirky, but then it escalated. One time I watched him stare at a couple of little boys for a considerable amount of time before he finally got back to what he was doing. I thought perhaps he was just envious of how young and lively they were, and wished to be that young again. Once again, I had no idea how wrong I was. One day I came into work, like any other day. It was a nice day outside, so I didn't really want to be at work, but oh well. My supervisor told me that I needed to cap the bins, which basically means I need to take inventory of what we have and pull anything that we need to stock off the shelves onto a cart and onto the floor. A lot of this requires a ladder, as the shelves are quite high, and once again, I'm not very tall. I'm on top of the ladder with my earbuds in, just doing my job, when I turn around and notice him staring at me. It almost seemed like he had been staring at my ass. I pull out an earbud and ask him if he needs something, but he just turns around and walks away, saying nothing at all. Why was he staring at me? I felt kind of violated, but I figured I must have been mistaken. So I got back to working again, and the rest of my day went as normal. The next day, John came into work and walked right up to me. In one quick breath, he told me that he had wrote a song for me. My thoughts were clearly written on my face. What the fuck? I barely even know this guy, and he wrote a song for me. The fuck? He ignored my confused look and began to sing. I don't remember exactly what the lyrics were, but to sum it up, basically the song was about how I was his ray of sunshine. I was thoroughly creeped out. Thanks, I said, not able to hide my confusion and disgust. You didn't like it? He said. He seemed surprised. Sorry, I barely even know you. It's kind of creepy, man. You're also way older than me, that's fucked up. He said he thought that I was gay, and I told him that I'm bi, but that I wasn't interested in him at all. That made him really angry. and he went off on a rant, yelling about how I came on to him and that he was reciprocating my feelings for him. What the fuck? Everything I had said to this creep up until this point had been completely professional. The only thing I had done was answer some of his strange questions. He stormed out of the store fuming. I went to my supervisor and told her everything that happened. She doesn't take harassment lightly, and helped me to file an official complaint against him. When he came back to work the next day, she took him into the back, and I'm not sure what all was said, but she fired him. As he walked out of the store, he walked right past me, giving the most deadly glare I've ever seen in my life. I was glad that he was finally gone from my life, but you guessed it, I was wrong. I was having a normal day at school and my classes ended. I was walking out of the building, talking with a friend, when John walked up out of nowhere and started yelling at me. Shit, I thought. I forgot I told him where I went to school. He said he knew that I was in love with him, and to just come clean and admit it. You were just a co-worker to me, John. I don't have any feelings for you. Please leave me alone. This made him even angrier, and he came at me, threatening to kill me. My friend backed me up, and we managed to get him on the ground and under control while we called the cops. When they showed up, I explained everything and they arrested him. As he was being dragged away, he threatened to kill me and my family. I pressed charges against him for sexual harassment and assault. When they investigated a little further, they found that his home computer actually had pictures of naked young boys, some even underage. All of them seemed very amateur, as if he had taken them himself. Being told this made me sick to my stomach, and made me even sicker to think of what might have happened to me if my friend hadn't been there to help me out when he assaulted me. I can't even begin to imagine. Turns out that he had actually raped and molested those poor boys. He was sentenced to life in prison for sexual harassment, sexual assault, kidnapping, rape, molestation, and so many counts of possession of child pornography that I can't even remember. It made me feel good to know that this piece of shit was off the streets. So John from Walmart, for the love of God, I hope I never meet you again. 3. Thankfully I recovered from this with no lasting harm, but it's a wild story I like to tell people. Before I get into this, I have to note, because a lot of my actions in this story are very stupid. When this happened, I was a naive and stupid 18-year-old. I was raised very isolated, and had been given absolutely no life lessons or real-world lessons by my parents. Because they thought I would never leave home, that's a whole other story. So when I was kicked out a few months prior to this event, I learned everything the hard way. I had some extra money after I had paid rent, a thing I never had, so I decided to check out this restaurant I had been wanting to. I leave the restaurant and decided, while I was out, to go buy cat litter at a CVS across the street. I left without a cat litter because they didn't carry the brand I usually went with. This is where I ran into a dude I never got the name of, but he's crucial to this story. He was a panhandler, not a very uncommon thing in the town I lived in at the time. And he cornered me and started rambling on about something. He was talking so fast and scattered, I didn't catch everything he was saying. But it was clear he wanted money. I kept reiterating to him I didn't have any cash, just a debit card that didn't work at any ATMs, which wasn't a lie. It was a debit card issued by the Cash App. Even still, he started to lead me to an ATM to get money out for him. At one point, he took my phone and called himself to get his number in my phone for some reason. When he pulls me to the ATM, a woman is standing in front of it. I recognize this woman because earlier she has stopped me on the street to ask for directions, but left like she was frustrated when I pulled out my phone to find it on Google Maps. She and the man get into an argument, which I have reason now to believe had been staged. I heavily believe these two were working together. She calls security over, and the man makes a show of telling the woman that he's going to shoot her. The woman pulls me off, introduces herself as Beth Weasel, and keeps reiterating to me how she saved me from this man. She keeps bringing this up all through the night of this event, how she saved me from this man. I was so frazzled from the event she somehow convinced me that I had agreed to give her $20 for... Her original story was something along the lines of her sister was in jail and her car had gotten towed, and she needed just $20 more to bail her sister. I don't remember her reasoning for the jailing. She talked so fast I couldn't really get a lot out of her. I mentioned my card doesn't work on ATMs, but I believe it can get cash back. She drags me to a Walgreens and asks me to get cash back there. Turns out I was wrong. I couldn't get cash off the card in any way by conventional means. I didn't have a bank account to cash out from the Cash App too, which is why I had a debit card linked to the Cash App. That's also another story involving Chase screwing me. This is where her whole 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. kidnapping event started. She is absolutely desperate to get money off me. A lot of things happened that can be summed up in a few points. She drags me around to a few stores in the block to try and get cash back. Doesn't work at any stores. She hatches a scam to buy batteries at a gas station, bring them to a CVS, claim to return them, and get money that way. Well, it does work, and I give her $15 thinking the deed is done. She suddenly needs more. This goes back and forth with the buying and returning of another store scam, until she trips up. Instead of buying batteries, she buys hair dye at Walgreens to return at CVS. CVS doesn't carry that brand, the scheme is broken. Walgreens won't do a cash return, just put it back on my card. Now she has, I believe, about $20 to $30 in cash from this scam. But it's not enough. I'm done with her, and tell her I'm more than happy to buy her an Uber to drive her to her sister, and then she can pay the bill. She keeps freaking out about the Uber, claiming they're so unsafe. She finally does agree to the Uber, but not for the reason I wanted her to get one. Now she has a new plan to get money off this hair dye. Take the hair dye to Walgreens 1, return it at Walgreens 1, and get store credit on a card. Bring SC card to Walgreens 2, buy hair dye there with card. Bring hair dye to Walgreens 3, return for cash. The plan only worked because the dude at the register knew her, probably knew what was happening, and gave me cash instead of a card because he felt bad for me. He insisted on signing me up for a Walgreens rewards card, and typed into the field, "Sorry for her." Uber driver returns us to our original part of town near the restaurant mentioned earlier. She insists she now wants to repay me for being so kind to help her. Uber drives us to various homes downtown. She disappears for 10 or 20 minutes at a time and returns. She claims it's because she left her purse at her friend's apartment. He won't let her in. Now she has to go to his mom's apartment to get his mom to call him. Uber driver eventually is fed up and offers to drop me off at home. I don't want this woman to know where I live, so I say no to it, and break down crying because I just want to go home. He drops us off at a Waffle House. Beth blows up on me, claiming me acting crazy and crying is why he didn't want to drive us anymore. I yell back at her, the first time I've said anything against her that night. I didn't start crying until after he said he was done. And now she suddenly keeps screaming she's scared of me. I keep telling her I just want to go home, but she won't let me leave. Eventually she starts going on about how we could go to the hospital and sleep there, and in the morning she'll take me to a bank so she can repay me or something. I don't buy it for a second. But there is a hospital within walking distance of the Waffle House where we were, and I told her I would only go there. My plan was to leave once she was there and walk home, which was only a 3-mile walk from the hospital I wanted to go to. She starts pretending to fall asleep, claiming she's too tired to walk the half-mile to the hospital, and tells me what I need to do is fake an anxiety attack, call an ambulance, and then the ambulance would take us to the hospital. She takes my phone from me and calls the ambulance. I'm furious now, because I keep saying no to this. This seems illegal. It's already done, so I just say like, "We're going to the downtown hospital, I will not go to any other hospital." That way I can still have my plan to walk the 3 miles home. She agrees right up until the ambulance gets there and tells them, "You know what? Her mom wants her to go to the hospital in the east side of town." This is closer to her house apparently. And as for me, 13 miles away from home. It's 3 a.m. by this point, and the buses have stopped running for the night. I would be stranded. The only reason I got out of it is one of the paramedics knew Beth. She made her sit in the front seat while she, the paramedic, drove. The man paramedic sat in the back with me and didn't have a clue what was going on. When we got there, the woman made Beth go to the lobby. I broke down crying, saying I've been held hostage by her all night and just wanted to go home. The paramedic told me she knew what was happening. Beth had done this multiple times before. Eventually a cop drove me home, and that's about the end of the night. Some other things had happened that I didn't know how to fit into the story without breaking the flow of it. She kept claiming she needed to pee every 10 minutes, but then would spend 15 to 20 minutes in the bathroom. At one point she forced me to stand in the bathroom with her so I wouldn't leave her sight. She kept trying to convince me she was a rich businesswoman and her dad was a very wealthy landowner named Ben Weasel. To her credit, Ben Weasel does exist and he is a landowner, but he's 30 years old. His kids in his photos are elementary-aged children. Beth looked to be 40 to 50. She kept telling me that if I stayed with her, she'd buy all these things for me, buy me a car, get me my own apartment in the nice part of town, etc. I didn't believe any of it, but honestly, I was stuck with her in a very bad part of town. I'd rather stick with a crazy but not armed and dangerous woman than a random dude that might do worse than steal my money. She was so wrapped up in her lie that she was this rich businesswoman. She said, "You should Google me," so I did. Guess what I came up with? Police records. A story about a stolen car she was involved in, and a news article archived from the late 80s about her trying to bribe someone into not reporting a pit bull killing their dog. She kept talking about this friend of hers named Chia that we could go stay with for the night before the hospital thing happened. This Chia person sure seemed to have a lot of identities. First she was a girl who worked at a courthouse, then she was an old woman who used a respirator at night so she couldn't hear when Beth went to knock on her door, then called her. This was one of the stops we made with the Uber driver. Then he was a man who would give them money if we all bought him a gift card to a steakhouse. She couldn't keep her story straight at all. She kept putting numbers into my phone for various reasons, claiming they were her family members, even claiming one was her sister. You know, the one supposedly in jail? People she could call for help or something. And was very, very insistent that I delete all those numbers. She made me let her look at my phone to make sure the numbers had been deleted. If it wasn't for that, I probably would have called them all out of curiosity after the fact. She got a weird vibe every time I took my phone out, even though I wasn't doing anything but looking at the time or something. At one point I took my charger out of my purse, and she freaked out thinking I had a gun. The dude I had initially ran into that led me into this trap popped up again, knocking on the window of a gas station we were in, and Beth made a huge show of calling the cops on him. He left immediately after knocking on the window. It would have been impossible for him to have tracked us down. He would have had to have been following us all over town for 3 hours. I know the two were working together because of this, because Beth made a huge point of, "Now how could he have followed us? See, I'm protecting you." I'd like to say let's not meet, but I actually did run into her 2 more times after this. Thankfully nothing came of either of them. I was on the bus to work one day, and she was there blabbing to some other guy on the bus. She hid her face when I got off, as if I didn't hear her distinctive voice rambling about her "I'm so rich" scam to some poor dude. Good thing the guy didn't get roped into it. The second time I saw her walking across the street at a bus stop I was at. She didn't notice me that time. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 340. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. I just want to say thank you to everybody who's been leaving comments on the Halloween videos. We have a few more to do. By the time you guys get this, it will be Monday, so there should be one up on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, then that'll be the end of them. Just hope I make it through because, the week I start to get trouble with my throat would be the week that I'm doing the Halloween thing, wouldn't it? Yes. But we're okay just now, so we mustn't grumble. We're getting the work done, just not quite as well as I would usually hope to. Okay, and with that I'm heading off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.